Good afternoon, and welcome to KCW Moments, where we're unplugged, real, and relevant. I'm excited to be here with you today. We have a great lineup today. I want to welcome you. I'm Kimberly C. Williams, your host, and that person on the end, David E. Carter, is our co-host. And we have two great, phenomenal people in the middle, Pastor and Overseer Allan H. Gray and Tahir Johnson. We're excited to be here with you today. How's everybody doing this afternoon?
Good.
Fantastic.
Great.
Excited. So, David, what's been going on? Let's open us up.
Well, I can tell you one thing. I don't know about everybody else, but this felt like a long week. It seemed like it took forever for Saturday to come. We're here. But I'm glad to be here. I'm glad to have our two wonderful guests here today. And I know that we have a special topic we're talking about today.
Yes.
And what is that?
It's Black economics. And speaking of economics, before we get started, I'm going to talk about my sponsors. We appreciate them. They're part of the reason why we're here at WBGR Online. And we thank Lionel and his great team here at WBGR, but we also want to thank Shalette Wright of Beyond the Mirror Styles and Makeup. She's a great makeup artist, and you can find her in Fort Washington, Maryland. And also we want to thank our house photographer, Mr. Marcus Williams of Marquis D Photography. And he is your mobile photographer here in the DMV. But as a matter of fact, he's going to be in Atlanta coming up next month. So stay tuned. Pay attention to our social media, and we'll blast out. If you're part of my Atlanta family, I would love for you to support and show patronage to him. He's a great young man doing great things. And so we're excited about our sponsors. Amen? Amen. So, while I am here, I would love for you to do some things for me today. David, normally we don't really talk about telling people to share or tag or invite different people. The numbers have been pretty good. I was telling Overseer Gray that we did over 1,000 views last week, and I was like, wow, and I didn't even really share a lot. But that was from the station side. We had like 100 and something from my page. But I was really excited about that, and because I didn't really interact a lot last week. We're going to try to do better about that. But if you would, do me a favor and just tag your friends, share it when you see it pop up, and because I think Black economics is something that we don't talk about often.
Sure.
We talk about a lot of things. We talk about when the new Jordans are coming out. We talking about when Michael Kors releases a new bag. We can talk about things like that. We can talk about Black Panther, the movie, selling out theaters and different things like that. But we rarely talk about Black economics. So today our topic is, again, Black economics, and we're going to get down. We're going to get down with it, and we're going to talk about things. The lines are going to be open later on at 301-429-9247 for you to call in and ask questions to our experts here today, or to speak with me and David. But again, our topic today is Black economics, and we're going to discuss the role of the Black church and how it plays in Black economics, and what does investing look like in our community. So again, joining us today, we have my pastor and Overseer Allan H. Gray of NuVision Kingdom Life Center in District Heights, Maryland. And we have Tahir Johnson, who is a financial expert and advisor. So, to those of you, I'm sorry if you're hearing noise, I got the paper here. So for those of you who want to know, what is economics? Sometimes we talk about Black economics, Pastor, and sometimes we say we need to have Black commerce and let's do business on our block. But do we even really know what economics means? I know, David, millennials, they have their different way of thinking. I know sometimes you've heard me talk to you and my daughter Brianna, and I'm like, look, y'all need to get your mind right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Y'all need to save some money, and then y'all need to go over here to Industrial Bank. I'm not saying nothing, but we need to put some money in our communities. I think we should diversify and have money in different places, because I think we can really grow and expand either way. But I'm really always pushing that. And so I want to just give you the definition today. Economics is the branch of knowledge concerned with the production, consumption, and transfer of wealth. We can drop the mic right there. David, what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts, David?
Let's read that.
Read it again.
One more time.
It is the branch of knowledge concerned with the production, consumption, and the transfer of wealth?
If we focus on, there are obviously different parts of that definition, but the transfer of wealth. If you think back to how, we came up and our history, we never had the opportunity to transfer wealth. We never had the opportunity to actually experience wealth in the beginning. Mm-hmm. So this is somewhat all new to us now. So now that it's new to us, how do we, and I hope it's open to you, Pastor Gray, and Tahir, how do you now teach a new generation the traits or characteristics of transferring wealth to their upcoming generation?
For sure. So I'll say one of the things, in my opinion, is if you rewind the clock and you look at our history, one of the focuses when it came to economics primarily was on consumption. And when I say consumption, if we rewind the clock back, my dad often speaks about what it was like to grow up in the 60s, of course, when there were separate things, black and white. We had at once we had the opportunity to consume the things that white people had that we didn't necessarily have before, then it was something that, we became part of chasing that American dream. And where previously we had our own economic systems, we became more invested in trying to achieve that American dream, which was what the white man had. So in terms of having the consumption down, there was something that, we have down. But as Kim said, it was also the creation of wealth and then transfer of wealth, because to your point, we haven't had the chance to accumulate wealth because we came from slaves. We never were really able to get those principles down, and that's where we fall short.
Mm-hmm. That's great.
That's great. Now, there was a B clause. I'm a preacher, can you tell? But there's a B clause in the definition. It says the condition of a region or group as regards to material prosperity. Overseer Gray, prosperity in the church. It's almost as if you stand across your pulpit and you mention prosperity in the church, all hell breaks loose. I was speaking with you before we opened up the show today. I was looking at some numbers, and Tahir, it blew me utterly away. Mm-hmm. Annually, the black church, I'm not talking about the church world as a whole, mm-hmm. the black church brings in over $420 billion. Mm-hmm. And that makes it interesting, Overseer, how number 45. This is my show. I approve that message. Wants to open the doors and allow, doing away. He signed a bill doing away with the separation of church and state. Black and a lot of black pastors are excited about that. But if we can just look at the economics of it, I just gave you a number at $420 billion. I would think that Uncle Sam, the government, wants to figure out how they can tap into it. But what is the role of the church, and how do we look at things when it comes to black economics?
Well, I think going back to the A clause of the definition, what stood out to me was the branch of knowledge. I think we have misdefined what power we have because we've focused on the end product as opposed to how it initiates, which is, what is your knowledge base about finances? How do you think about them? Because how you think about it will determine ultimately what comes of it. The idea, kind of going back to, for many in our community, specifically, money is a relatively new thing within the last couple of generations for us when we're thinking about wealth and what it produces. But knowledge is not, and how a man thinketh is he. Mm-hmm. And if we don't focus on the way that we understand finances, then it doesn't make a difference how much we have, clearly, by the numbers you just quoted. If we don't get our minds right concerning it, then it could be $420 billion, it could be $4 trillion, or it could be $40. It really comes down to the way that we think and what we do with those thoughts. And the thinking aspect is more than just, formal education. It can come from experience. I think that we all have historical roots within our family line where the generations before us had a lot less from a material standpoint, but they accomplished a whole lot more.
Yes.
Yeah.
We had day workers and different civil servants and the like who made a fraction of what we are currently making, but were able to send kids to school or accomplish so much more because of the way that they thought. So my concern at this stage of the Black church in particular, but our community as a whole, is really getting our minds right. How we think. Because if we don't start thinking, that branch of knowledge will be something that will constantly hold us back above all else.
I think so too. I wanted to say this, one of the reasons why I attached myself to Overseer Gray's vision and the ministry at NuVision Kingdom Life Center is because he has a passion for community, and he has a passion that of kingdom. And I think that Tahir, it's almost like Black Panther. We get excited. You said you saw it twice. I saw it twice. Wakanda forever. Wakanda forever. But how do we bring a modern day Wakanda to this present time? In my research, David, I saw that it would take 228 years for the average Black African American family to reach the level of wealth of one white family, and then only 82 or 84 years for Latinos. It blew me away. Such a big gap in wealth. Tahir, as a financial advisor and an expert, and I know you've even worked with me personally and gave me some keys. We were talking earlier that, and I'm telling everybody that's listening right now, if you went to the movies and you took more than just yourself and got some popcorn, a soda and whatever and spent $100, I'm going to need you right now. Soon as this show, wait till after 2:45, but right after this show is over, I'm gonna need you to go online and Tahir, I want you to give them different resources. And I know I saw some things like Ameritrade and different things, and I need you to look up DIS, which is Disney, and I want you to buy at least one share. And at $107 and like 65 cents, that's what they closed at. And for the past 3 years, Disney has not raised their shares it's just now going over 100. But with the diversification that they're getting ready to do with ESPN and everything, stocks are going off the Richter scale. Because I'm just saying, think about it. I love Black Panther. Of course, there were nice, good-looking men, women. We were empowered. We talked about the dynamics of family. We talked about the diaspora, being in Africa. But we were talking about not being colonized. But check this out right here. How can we sit through a movie theater, a movie for 2 hours and 30 minutes, wait after the show, wait for all the credits, look at the next thing coming through Marvel, and not have a conversation about investment? What do you say to these things?
Certainly, and I love how you said, how do we build our own Wakanda? And that is essentially building wealth in the Black community. And it starts with saving, investing, planning, and I'll say budgeting. To your point, I know we went out to see the movies, and it costs it costs $15 per ticket. It costs $20 for a large popcorn there or something like that. I don't know. Wow. You spend like $100 when you go to the movies. So when you think of course, not saying that we don't want to spend our money to support these types of things, but what are we putting away in our savings account? What are we putting away to save for retirement? We have children. What are we putting away to save for them to go to college? What do we have for emergencies? We can't, and it's the same conversations that we've had for a long time about material things, but we can't go out and put our money into consumption unless we're putting money away to save for the future.
That's true. So, Overseer Gray, I had a question for you coming, and I'm gonna ask this on with David. I want the two of you to talk about this. David, from a millennial's perspective, how or can the church recapture millennials from the stance of economics? How can we bridge the gap? Because a lot of times, we talked about it a few minutes ago, a lot of times millennials will look at, oh, what a pastor, he getting rich, he driving the Benz, he driving the Maybach, and we down here in the struggle. How do we bridge that gap? Because we have to be clear and understand every church is not robbing. Every pastor is not building their own kingdom. So today, we have an overseer here. I want us to talk a little bit in dialogue on how we can bridge that gap. Tahir said we have to start saving. As a millennial, how do you see that? And Pastor Gray, how does the church step in? And what tools? I know that at our church, you teach us biblical entrepreneurship. It is part of your university, and as you build out. I know what we get, but how can we talk to the viewers today to get them tapped into it, and how we can help the millennial generation?
Well, I would say first, transparency is key. You know, we like you said, you know, millennials and everyone else have seen some pastors, you know, be quite boastful about some of the things that they have, some of the possessions that they've acquired during their, while they were pastoring the church. I think that's very important. Secondly is churches need to, and I believe, this is my opinion, that I believe that we should have more financial literacy classes or programs, because that we really don't have that, you know, that's not prevalent in many churches today. And I think, you know, this generation is I would say the technological generation. You know, we love everything tech. You know, whether it's computers, Apple Watches, or phones and all that. So I think and we spend a lot of our money on that. And not only tech, but we also spend our money on clothes. You know, and you talked earlier, Kim, about Jordans, tennis shoes. You know, we spend, especially in our community, we spend a lot of money on that particular brand of shoe. So I think if we are knowledgeable, and back to that branch of knowledge that you mentioned earlier, if we're knowledgeable about, you know, finances, we're knowledgeable about budgeting and saving, and also if we have someone that we can look up to, that's being, you know, transparent with us, is letting us know, like, okay, I'm saving just like you're saving. You know, I'm using the same tactics I'm telling you to do, and see my outcome. You know, so I think that probably would help us bridge that gap more.
You know, that's first of all, those keys are critical and tremendously helpful. I think the church has done a poor job in this particular branch of knowledge. I think that we have become comfortable in being consumers more than we have been creators. For us, one of the things that we push is our 52-week challenge. It's a 52-week saving challenge, where you just put that number of the week of the year in dollars away in a savings for yourself. So, you know, January of the 1st was the 52nd week, and we count it down so that at the end of the year, you're putting $1 away a week. So by the end of the year, if you just kind of put this savings plan together, you have $1,378 put to the side just for yourself. When we instituted this a couple of years ago, of course, we had to get over the natural thought of the people thinking that I'm challenging you to save so that at the end of the year I'm going to ask you for it. The reality is that that's never happened and is not going to happen, because we realize that if you do not have an emergency savings, then you are constantly eating from your reserve. You're constantly eating from your supply. And even though we want to start talking about different economic opportunities, what I've found is that if the individual member does not start to see an increase in their own savings, then it's hard for them to get out of the pattern that they're in. So we do economic classes, financial classes, we do budgeting and things like that, and we even have what's called biblical entrepreneurship that Kim made mention too, which is designed in an effort to teach you how to pursue your passion and then make it profitable, where you understand who and how you are gifted, and then understand that God gave you that gifting in an effort to monetize it so that you can be free for him. It's not just about creating or developing a business, even though that is there, occupy until I return, but it's really about creating something that leverages your time so that you're not an employee or a slave to someone else, but you're free for the Lord because of the way in which you have stewarded that particular branch of knowledge, talking about economics. So for me, just in the beginning, in order to answer your question, I think it's critical to get people in a frame of reference, whether we're talking about millennials or anyone else, of learning how to save money. Mm-hmm. You know, if you learn how to save money and then you get into budgeting, then that's like 80% of it. Mm-hmm. You don't need to make any more. You just need to be a better steward over what you make. If you've got something coming in, I guarantee you that there's a grace from God in an effort to not only allow you to handle everything you've got, but to then get ahead of it. We are so accustomed, and kind of going to part of the inference that was made in the setup of this particular question, we are so apt in prosperity gospel to the degree that we believe that it's about getting more instead of learning how to be faithful over what is. Mm-hmm. That the prosperity gospel is teaching you that there's a grace that God provides for you to be able to become a conqueror with what you've got. But we've got to really get into understanding how to steward what we have. And just for me, it starts with savings. From that savings, it gives you that gap. That gap now allows you to start thinking beyond what you currently are, and that moves us into biblical entrepreneurship.
And, you know, Pastor, I think it's great that you teach that type of message, to your congregation, especially because traditionally in our community, the black church is one of the most trusted places where we can go to for a wealth of information. And I've had the opportunity to, partner with a number of churches. My own church, Metropolitan AME.
Yes, sir.
I've up in New Jersey, Pastor DeForest Soares. He has a great program called D Free, and it's about working to get congregations to be debt free. Because one of the things that we talk about it, I think is especially important in our community is now financial slavery, if you think of it, is a new slavery. Being in bondage, where you have debt, bills you can't pay, do what you need to do. So once you can become debt free, you can become mentally free. It just opens up your life to so many more types.
Can I jump on that? Because I think there's something that the church needs to kind of adjust its thinking concerning, especially when we're thinking about going into Scripture and properly discerning and communicating it. Is that when we look at the way that Scripture talks about finances and it talks about work, jobs in its modern day setting is equivalent to slavery in biblical times. Mm-hmm. So we look and talk about getting debt free, but we really need to talk about getting job free.
Okay.
Because in biblical times, nobody worked for anyone except for slaves.
That's right.
Everybody had their own businesses, and they did bartering, they did business, they occupied. It's not until these last several hundred years that we have now made working for someone an honorable thing. But when you work for someone, you'll never be free to be able to live to the full potential of who you are. Right. So, I think part of our challenge is that we do, and this is a good thing, we do work, some of us, on moving people to becoming debt free. But you're not free.
That's true. That's true.
You're not free, because I don't know about anybody else. I know whenever God calls me to do something, it's never convenient.
Exactly.
You gotta get show up Monday 9 a.m. 9 to 5.
He doesn't call us to do things according to the free time we have from 6 to 4 in the morning. Right. He just doesn't do it.
Right.
So therefore, have to understand the priority of the way that God works. He doesn't care about our jobs.
Right.
Because technically that's not what he created you for. He didn't create you to live out somebody else's vision. That's not what you were created for. I bless God for all of the jobs I've ever had, and I bless God for the jobs that our members have, but that is not the epitome. And if we're going to talk about black economics, if we're going to talk about kingdom economics, we have to understand that we have to move ourselves away from resting in a job. Period. God did not create us for that. So you're not going to be able to hear with the greatest of clarity if that is the box in which you are funneling your information from.
That's powerful. That's powerful.
Now, I want to talk about that. You talk about we're not created, we weren't destined to be on that particular job that we're on. What would you say to those people that are fearful of taking that jump to the next step?
Well, first I'd say God didn't give you the spirit of fear, so we got to deal with that. I think that it's natural, but just because you have a fear doesn't mean that should stop you.
I agree.
We were talking earlier before we began how this one particular young lady, at the mention of she wasn't with Snapchat anymore, tanked their sales. What job does she have? She's created a brand.
That's right.
She created a business off of what she has, and she's tanking $1 billion business.
That's right. At one word.
At one word.
Right.
At the word. It shall. I promise you, don't blink. At your word, so shall it be.
Exactly. That's powerful.
So, I'm sorry, because...
Go ahead.
We everybody wants to down the Kardashians. But there's some of the greatest entrepreneurs this side of heaven.
Mama Chris
because
going on.
The people that hate them, and I'll admit I'm not a fan of theirs, but I don't hate their game.
Right.
Well, what skill do they have?
None.
Marketing. Marketing. They have learned how to monetize their name.
Yes.
And at their word, things shift and move.
That's right.
They shift and move.
Right.
And people who have jobs complain about them.
Exactly. Exactly, but they watch it on Sundays. But okay, so with that being said, I'm going to look at one of these questions. But before we say that, when you talked about entrepreneurship, this is what I want to talk about: was black entrepreneurs. And whenever we reach that pinnacle, we usually sell out. And how do we again create the kingdom of God? How do we create our modern day Wakanda if we're going to keep selling out? For example, Carol's daughter is no longer owned by a black woman. She sold it to L'Oreal. BET is not black entertainment. Their parent company is Viacom. We just got Essence back, okay? But why do we have to continue to sell out? Now, that's just a question I want to pose to the viewers that we don't necessarily have to discuss today because we have to move on. We have so much stuff, but I want to touch on this topic right here. And Tahir, even though this is a question, one of our viewers here on the show, actually it is Brianna, sure. She says, can you talk about how Christian millennials or millennials in general look at tithing?
It's real. It's unplugged.
It's unplugged. We real and we relevant.
Let's get to it.
Pastor, do you want to go first?
I'll let y'all go.
Okay,
I'll
go. I'm going to say this. What I want to say this, I can't say from a millennial perspective, but I'm just going to talk about from a grown person's perspective. Pastor will tell you we had this conversation even in our church. And as a preacher, as a prophet, I'm going to say we unplug, but we do come from a Christian perspective. The Bible says in Numbers 18 that the tithe goes to the priest. Point blank, period. The tithe goes to the priest. Why? Because in the priestly duties, there is no inheritance. The priest has no inheritance to leave to his seed. It's just they become priests. It comes through a holy lineage. So the tithe is what is used to take care of the priest. So the offering, technically, according to Scripture, is supposed to take care of the house. I know I lost about 2,500 of y'all, and I know some of y'all gonna talk about it on my timeline. Please do. We can go to school now. We can go to work. It's nothing. But I'm gonna say this, and he does not. Oh my God, he's getting ready to probably fuss me out tomorrow when we get in church. He's gonna give me the side eye. But one thing I can say: when you have good ground to sow in, I urge you to sow good seed. Sow your tithes into good seed. And I'm going to tell you, ever since I've started going to NuVision and God gave me that truth concerning the tithes and where it was supposed to go, every time I put my tithes, and he can tell you, I don't even use a regular church envelope. I'm going straight to the love envelope because I need to make sure it's going to his house. Because you know some people suspect. They use it for what they want. What the church need. I need to get it in the ground where my stuff is going to yield a bumper crop. That's just me. Okay? You didn't hear. That's not Bible. That's just skim. Okay. every time, David, every time I put seed in either his hands or his wife's hands, and they pray over my seed, I yield the increase within days. I ain't talking years, I'm talking days. So that's the perspective that I come from, tithe. It's not about you lining the man of God's pockets. But I'm just saying, if he was at a corporate 500 or at a corporate job, y'all give him his money. Why? I'm just saying, why we got to be broke, busted, and disgusted and can't have nothing nice? We just got, but let him not come see about you when you in the hospital. Let him not call you. Let him go without. He never gets a day off. And I'm saying this, I'm so passionate about it because I am a preacher. And I know what it is to travel for 2 and 3 hours and somebody want to give you a $25 check and a chicken sandwich. The devil is a lie. I can't pay my bills with a chicken sandwich, okay? Because every preacher, and I have to keep reiterating this, every preacher, every church is not about stealing from you. It takes money. The church is an organization with different organisms that makes it come alive. Mm-hmm. It is business. Tahir, let you run your nonprofit or your church and embezzle money and see don't they go to jail. Mm-hmm. Am I right about it?
Hey, you're right. And I'll say, because I've worked with a number of churches, managing finances, and it takes those programs that churches put on are not free.
That's right.
And if you ask my personal opinion upon, tithing or giving to the church, if you will, I think the black church is an important institution within our community. Mm-hmm. And if not that worthy of our support, what is? We have to give back to our institutions the same way we're giving back to other people's institutions. Mm-hmm. That goes back to supporting churches, HBCUs, mm-hmm. Me being a product of Howard University, all those types of things. Because if we don't, guess what's going to happen? Mm-hmm. Could you imagine not having that mm-hmm. type of institution here to be able to support us?
That's right.
We'd be lost without it.
I think what millennials did, and I'll take the blame for that. I mean, I take the blame, but I'm a part of this. I think what we did, we made a mistake by allowing leaders that weren't true, that mm-hmm. weren't honest, mm-hmm. turn our perception of mm-hmm. tithing. Mm-hmm. And we should have focused on what the word said instead mm-hmm. of what the leaders did. Mm-hmm. And I think we still have, I guess you could say we're still in that mindset whereas when we deposit our money, we give our tithing, that it's not going to where it's supposed to go to. Mm-hmm. And honest, like you said, if it's in good ground, you'll know. Mm-hmm. But we have to focus on the word and not necessarily the leaders as a whole.
That's right.
Because I can say with all honesty, if I was going to a church and I felt like the whole purpose of my giving was mm-hmm. that the pastor said the Lord woke him up and told him that he needed a jet, I would not be giving this freely as if, because it's out there, If that was my church, I got kids, I got to put through school and whatnot. But
true.
When we're at a place and this is stuff where it's going back into our community. Mm-hmm. Like, why not? Like, to your point, I think the work that these pastors are doing in the church, these real good black churches, they're giving back to the community, and it's a lot of work. Mm-hmm. It's a lot of work.
Scripture says, try the Spirit by the Spirit.
Come on.
Mm-hmm. And I think one of the things that's really important, this was part of our offline conversation, is the church is the one place where people experiment as opposed to, making it a real place. With the internet, people have resolved in their minds that I can be at church though I'm only online.
Bedside Baptist.
Bedside Baptist. That's just, and that's so unrealistic, but we have made that a real thing. You cannot have a real relationship long distance or through social media. You have to be able to touch it and experience it in order to know that it's real. And too often we have mystified faith as opposed to understanding that faith is built on facts. Mm-hmm. So you have to try the Spirit by the Spirit. You have to be able to get in there and see. Scripture says, I'll give you pastors after your own heart.
Come on now.
So, to your point of, some who have prostituted this office and this responsibility, that would get out there and say, I heard the Lord and he wants me to have this, that, and or the third. Before I look at that leader, I ask myself the question, what heart led me to them? Mm-hmm. You know, what drew me here? Because 9 times out of 10, an individual that would have the gumption to make that kind of a statement had created some kind of an attraction to the people that are there. Mm-hmm. So the people were freely utilizing the services of the church that they wanted. They had, you know, they didn't come for the word, they came for children's ministry. Mm-hmm. They didn't come for the word, they came because they could get good parking places. They didn't come for the word because they came for the status of the church itself. Mm-hmm. So there's all these other things that brought you to put you in that pew. So now you're shocked that from the pulpit it was said that? Mm-hmm. What was said? So it's really important for us to understand that this goes both ways. You have to ask, well, what made me come here? Because whatever was just said that just shocked me, that wasn't the first thing that should have shocked you.
That's right.
So it's really important for us to understand that this is dynamic, that it requires for us to understand foundationally the church is built on the Word of God. So before I take the word from him or her, I need to try the word for myself. Mm-hmm. I need to do my own due diligence. Why am I sitting here just receiving as opposed to doing the proper study myself?
That's true. Okay, we got another question from one of our viewers, and I know we're talking about black economics again. For those who are just joining us, we are speaking about black economics, but we are unplugged, real and relevant, and we are non-scripted. So as the questions are coming, and we have such great experts here, we're going to ask the question. So we have a question. It says, this is from Eartha Macmillan. She says, why is tithes and offerings mindset so tied to the financial piece in the black church, and there are a few times where stewardship is taught along with tithing?
I think it goes back to the original question about the definition of economics, that branch of knowledge. It's easy for us to get to the offertory period and just simply say, give me. Mm-hmm. I'm here to receive. But then when you have a financial class, you don't have anybody there in the class.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. That was evident in the last class we had.
You know, because it's funny how we say we want transparency and we want education from a financial perspective, or in any of the other disciplines that our community needs. Mm-hmm. But we only show up for game time. Mm-hmm. We only show up for Sunday service. Mm-hmm. When those other services come around in order to deepen your understanding, mm-hmm. I'll even go when Bible study comes, so that you can learn what the Word has to say foundationally about all of these things. So to the point of tithing versus stewardship, you know, stewardship is taught from the garden. Mm-hmm. So if you're in Bible study, you'll learn that. Mm-hmm. But too often we want to complain and wonder where the money went, but where did you go?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And when you guys had that event and nobody showed up too, the lights were on, the air was on, the heat was on. Let somebody have showed up and it been hot in there. Complaining.
And when he did
sandwiches.
We had a whole series. He did a whole series on stewardship. Financial was one aspect of it, and I think we ended up doing about 2 weeks on that part. He started from the pulpit, and then he went into a whole series. And the classes were, we did a pretty good, you know, we know our pastor is a teacher. He loves to give us information. So I think at our church, if we're not there on Bible study, we are watching online or something, but we know in our church. But the bigger picture is, how do we get it to the others, to the nations? And that's a great point. I wanted to say this, that I was reading and doing some research last night, and Dr. Boyce Watkins said, and I said this earlier, he said that money should be viewed as a seed, not as consumption. And that can tie right into the tithe. The tithe is basically a seed. He said, try me at my word and see don't I perform it. Try me. And he takes 10% and lets you keep the 90%, and we still complain. And he blesses the other part. So, Tahir, it's tax time, and we know statistics says that most of us use it for big purchases. We go get a new car, we go get the new Louis bag, you know, we do kind of stuff like that. But but as a matter of fact, according to the state of work in America, black people spend 4% more money annually than any other race, despite the fact that we are the least represented race and the race that lives in poverty at the highest rate. How do we... never mind, I didn't want to ask that question because we already answered. I was going to ask the question. How do we change the trajectory? But we already said that. It's about your mindset.
Well,
the shift and the paradigm shift of your mind.
Well, it's about thinking about, where that money was going to go. And I'll say the thought that just came to me is, so one of the first times I had the opportunity to work with a church and from the point of view of finance, a pastor told me a story from the Bible about the parable of the talents. Now I know that I'm not a pastor, so I mess it up, but I'll say the overline.
Go for it.
The overline.
I'll clean up whatever.
So I'll let the pastor fill in what I mess up. But I'll say the overline lesson of the story is there was one person. He took what the master gave him and buried it in the sand. He did nothing with it. There was another person. He's with the seeds that he had. He's like sowed some of the seeds. He was just to put it in layman's terms, he was messing around. You have one person that he took what the master had and he multiplied it and and put it to good work. And so the way what I take away from that is that as being good stewards of what God has blessed us with, a lot of us with being given the same thing, what we will do with it. That is what gives us the opportunity to create our blessing. And from a financial standpoint, we have different financial instruments. A lot of our people, what we started the conversation off on was education. We don't know the different instruments that we can invest in. We don't know that the same way we talk about 10% of our money we should be putting away to the church, at least 10% of our money we should be putting away in our 401k.
Yes.
At least 10% of our money we should be putting away in a savings account that's there for emergency expenses. That we should have 6 months of our expenses and savings and investing. So what we do with that money and what God gives us with, and how we work it and put it to use, I think that is where we should look for our blessings to come from. I don't think it's necessarily, I have this money and I go to this church and the word is going to bless me to do this. It's like, you have that word, and what are we doing with what God has blessed us with?
That's good. That's good. I want to add on to that because one of the things that we talk about, we don't think about, is our human capital. And what are we producing? What are we being productive? And that's what we've heard throughout the years, that other races are more productive. We don't do anything. We just get and consume. We get and consume. This blew my mind. It says $1 circulates 6 hours in the black community, 17 days in the white community, 20 days in the Jewish community, and 30 days in the Asian community. 6 hours. That means it's Friday. David, I got paid. On the way to the house, I stopped past Curry Out, got me some chicken and mambo sauce. That just went into the Asian community because none of the carry-outs are owned by black people, okay? But they on every corner in our block, right? We go and we pay our rent, which the Jewish community owns most properties, and that's who we really paying our rent to if we don't own the house, right? And then after that, we gonna go to the check cashing place. First, we got to the check cashing place, which is owned predominantly by white Americans. So our dollar. So did it really last 6 hours? I said it was 6 hours, Pastor, because it hit the direct deposit at 12 o'clock. About 6 o'clock.
By the time you got off. By the time you got off, your money was gone.
So maybe they went
we don't even
we don't even own the liquor store.
Right. I'm just saying. So when we talk about
the weed man is where
the weed man is black. That's the only place.
Although even now with medical marijuana, it's getting ready to even.
Yeah.
So talk about economics. Let's talk about that.
Exactly. In DC. Exactly. How come our sons and our daughters had to go to jail? And now it's a multi-trillion-dollar industry
That we can't get in.
That we can't get in.
Mind you, that we can't get in. It's not even. They've set it up so that if you look at the distributors of legal marijuana, there are. I don't even know what the statistics are for the number of non-white owners of these distributing
It's only
sites.
one African-American young lady from Spelman College, I think she is from.
Yeah.
That just
I read that.
I read up on
dispensary
that.
here in Maryland. Okay, so I'm telling y'all, if pharmaceuticals, make it legal.
You know, we have we have to have hardline conversations. I love what you just outlined about the distribution, both of the way that our money circulates and even some of the places in which, or tools that are at our disposal. But we really have to get different thoughts about money itself, and what we currently have and what we should be doing with it. If you go through different neighborhoods where there are $1 million homes, and you look at what is actually in the driveway, I'm not talking about the mansions, but $1 million homes, what you'll see is in the driveways, you'll see Subarus and Hondas and Toyotas and the like. Because what you'll find is other communities have learned that I will put more money into aspects or assets than liabilities. We, on the other hand, tend to think, okay, if I make $100, that's $100 for me to spend. Instead of thinking that for every $100, I only have $60 that's actually mine. And if I was to set my life up where I lived on 60% and invested the rest, you know, I gave God his, I put it in both my 401 and my savings account, and just lived off of 60% of what I bring in, then you would find through the investments in that same year's time, you could do so much more without making any more.
That's right.
We in the church and in other aspects of our community teach the need to have more instead of learning how to be a proper steward over what you've got. God doesn't have to give you any more. There are countless grandmothers that had stacked away hundreds of thousands of dollars off of a percentage of what we make. How is that? Because they didn't spend every dime that they got. They saved the majority of it and learned how to budget and where their investments needed to be. And if we get that kind of knowledge, then we don't need to really focus on the back end of the definition or the B clause if we just start thinking differently.
That's right. That's right. So in other words, instead of black economics, it should be socio-economics when we deal with the mindset first, because we can always get programs. We can get programming.
They give us programs.
They give us programs. They're always giving us something. But if we don't shift our mindsets, if we don't have that paradigm shift, we are going to continue to get stuff, but we're going to stay where we are. And this is something that, when I want to piggyback off of something you just said, it says that according to Nielsen's report, Black Girl Magic and the brand loyalty is propelling the total black buying power towards $1.5 trillion by 2021. The number of black-owned businesses in the majority of them are owned by black women, and it's grown by 67% between 2007 and 2012. But at 1.3 trillion, we're at 1.3 trillion right now. They look at us as a commodity. Back in 1954, the secret of selling to the Negro market was financed by Johnson's Publishing Company, the publisher of Ebony magazine. Now, as a radio host, having a radio, advertising is how we fuel our budgets. That's how we fuel our budgets. But Tahir, in 1954, Mr. Johnson was just trying to get the white businesses to sell into their magazine that they created. Video calling The Secret of Selling to the Negro. Did it help us or did it hinder us?
And so you notice that's where that video is one of the most powerful things you could ever see, and you can actually watch it in full. Like I watched it on YouTube. But you know, that's where I started the conversation. We got that consumption part down by nature. But one of the I think one of the most important things that we can do in terms of our community, and making a point of a phenomenon that just happened this past weekend, the movie Black Panther. I did hear some commentary that if you think about it, it's a Disney movie. You know what I mean? It's great. It's black actors, black cast, black director. God bless it. I love the movie. Don't please nobody misconstrue as me saying something bad about Black Panther. I'm not going to be that guy. But at the same time, you know, when we talk about from our community and selling to the Negro, that is it.
Right.
Case in point. So, what we can do is we have again, going back to having our own institutions, putting the money into our own institutions. And I recognize that the money and whatnot that it took to make a film like that, we can't necessarily do something like that. But then again, we have a lot of black wealth and whatever in our community. So maybe we need to start a black movie studio.
Yeah. Tyler Perry has
start black businesses. Support our own and not just the movies. There's black businesses everywhere. We need to have black grocery stores. Black everything.
I want to say this. What that takes us into there to here is group economics. The Asians do it, the Italians do it, the Jews do it. But when we say, let's do it, when we say do it, we're racist.
I think part of the challenge is, in the reference to Black Wall Street, is the fact that we each feel like we need to do everything instead of learning what God created you specifically to do. And you master that and then create strategic partners with other people that do everything else. Going back to the different ethnic groups that you just named, it's important for you to have a set assignment. You are a communicator. You got communication. You run the whole communication aspect, and anybody that's in communication, you all work together. You are in finances. You got that covered. All right. Everybody that's in finances, we create that channel. If I have a communication thing, I got a little itch, but it's not my calling. Instead of me starting a radio station or a program, I say, hey, look, every now and again, when I have something I want to say or what have you, here's my thoughts. I may come on and do it, but I don't need my own show.
That's right.
When it comes to finances, I don't need to create a bank or a credit union. You got one, I'll support yours.
That's right.
I've got the ministry side, so here, and so forth and so on. But what we've done is we've allowed ourselves to be hoodwinked into believing that I'm so special I can do everything, instead of understanding that I was created to do one thing. And if I do that one thing well, and then partner that with strategic partners, then we have that community socio-economical thing, the socio-economic piece that our community desperately needs. But we still have that somewhat colonized mentality that the sooner we get together to start thinking in a certain way, then we allow outsiders to come in and make you you're better than that group. Come on, let me make you the star. So I'm gonna pull you out, Bobby. New Edition doesn't need you.
Right.
With Public Enemy, or when we think about every time we get a group and we start moving into a certain vein and start having certain success, then someone from the outside comes in and singles out someone and says, you're the real star.
I'm not black emoji.
And we fall for that every time. Every time. In ministry, it's the same way. There's not a community or there's not a discipline within our community where that trick has not continued to work.
And that's powerful. I want to say this, we're at 2:49. We got 5 more minutes, but I want to say this. It says that there are approximately 21 black-owned banks with assets totaling approximately $4.7 billion. That's only 0.43% of black Americans' $1.1 trillion in buying power. When you mentioned Black Wall Street, my perception is that when they destroyed those places like Oklahoma, like Wilmington, North Carolina, and the different places that they had those cities and set up, that fear gripped us. And there's now a fear of really standing up and taking that approach. As we close out, if you could give me 30 seconds, black economics, kingdom economics, group economics, socio-economics, what can we do strategically? We strategically have to set a plan. We have marched, we have convened, we have had church, we done prayed, we done snotted, we done cried, we done got up out of the floor, and nothing has changed. What would you say to the listeners that we have here today that we could do as far as setting up a strategic plan, to set the plan, to have accountability, and to have something that we can work with? What are the marching orders?
So for me, I would say that the number one thing that you can do to improve your personal economic situation and the economic situation of your community would be to start with a plan. And when I say plan, I mean in terms of, to the best of your ability, understand everything that is coming in and everything that is going out. What are you spending your money on? But the money that is going out, you do that strategically. The money that is going out, how much is going to bills, how much is going to entertainment, how much is going to saving for the future, how much is going to tithing. And based on that, you understand where that's going to get you, and actually having a plan. You can't wing it. And like we talked about in different areas, practicing cooperative economics, support people in your community. And especially when it comes to your finances, you wouldn't try to diagnose yourself with a medical condition.
That's true.
You probably wouldn't even fix your own car or something wrong with your house. So when it comes to your finances, which is, I'll say, at least equally important to those things, it's not something you want to do to yourself. You want to talk to somebody that's a professional, that has the experience, that does it. And that is actually one of the areas that our community falls behind because, for one, there's not a lot of us in the financial industry.
Right. True.
But for two, we're not engaged as frequently.
That's true.
And three, like we talked about from the beginning, our parents did not come from wealth and wealth within our community. So this is not something that's been passed down for generations.
Right.
So, I'll say seek the information where you can. If it's a seminar at your church, actually going into your whatever bank you bank with or a financial professional, seek out the resources and put a plan together. Check your credit. There's different things you can do, like Credit Karma. You can get your credit report once per year, annually, from freecreditreport.com, or maybe that's not correct, but anyway, you can get it from the government. You can Google it. Just all different types of things. You have to know your situation, plan for where you're coming from and where you want to go. And that's the most important thing. And like I said, figure out strategically how you want to spread it throughout the community.
That's great. And before we get ready to go, we're down to the last minute. This is a question that we have on the screen. It's saying, with young people and the generations that are now having babies, what is the appropriate age to start teaching financial literacy? So Tahir, if you could answer that for me, and we're gonna put it on our Facebook page. Okay. To answer that question. So I want to say this as we're closing out. Don't forget Pastor and Overseer Allan H. Gray of NuVision Kingdom Life Center. We have Tahir Johnson, who is a financial advisor and expert. I want to say, everybody, if you can, Wisdom 31 with Allan H. Gray. If you want to go and purchase his book, you can go and get that. We'll have all the information online for you. I thank everybody. David, thank you for being here with us again.
Always.
Thank you. We're here. This is KCW Moments, where we're unplugged, real and relevant. If you have any other questions, continue to put your questions, your comments on the screen. I will get in touch with these experts. So if I have an answer, I will be glad to give you your answer as soon as possible. Again, if you want to reach me, you can reach me at admin@KCWMSENT.com, and I am at KCW Moments on Twitter and Instagram, and David Carter is at President
Carter, CARTA.
So we're excited. Again, thank you, Overseer Gray. Thank you, Tahir, for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Our time is up, but join us again next week here at WBGR online and on Facebook Live. We should be going out, y'all, but I think they still got us on the screen, so we can keep talking. Let's keep talking until they close us out. Let's keep talking. Wisdom, I want to say Wisdom 31 is a great thing. Our pastor, for 31 days, he talks about the Proverbs and different things on how you can get information and get wisdom. In this day and age, that's what a lot of us lack. The wisdom, the knowledge, the understanding that we talked about earlier. And so I'm excited about this book. I'm excited that he's my pastor. I'm excited that Tahir, you're here. Ever since I met you, Tahir, we met back when I was with the National Action Network, and we were working on the parade, and Tahir was my assistant.
I remember that.
You remember the parade?
I remember that.
That was a minute ago.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. And it was amazing. Tahir was laughing at me because he was like, oh my God, it's like you'll be talking and you'll be like, Kim, such and such and such, and then all of a sudden you'll say move, and it's like you just part the Red Sea and you're just going through. We were expecting what, 10,000 people that day, and 50,000 showed up. It's incredible. But I'm excited. I'm thankful that you would come back. Throughout the years, like I said, you have been a great voice. Another thing, I want to definitely connect you with Pastor Gray, because we do a lot in our church with financial literacy. Elder Kevin Devine, he is over our education department, and he is really good with talking to us about finances, and I think it will be a great thing.
I'm
connect.
I'm always.
I love it.
That's what I love to
great.
do. The way I think about it, for me to have been blessed to, I guess, attain this type of experience and knowledge that I have. If I'm not going to put it back in my community, who else will, right?
Yeah.
So,
Gotta take that responsibility.
Yeah, so that's great. And so I don't know. I'm seeing myself still on the screen, but so we can keep talking. But I think we're actually off. I heard a little bit of music in the background. So he probably took us down. But I'm excited, y'all. We definitely gotta come up with some type of strategic plan. I know that I'm working with Pastor Ray, and his vision is called NuVision. You finished? Oh, we can.
He's like, keep going.
He's a
so
keep
maybe
going.
we can answer that.
We can answer the question. We can answer the question. Wrap it up. Okay, so he's saying wrap it up. Okay. I thought we were going to be told. I was waiting for the music to cue up, but if you could answer that question on as we close out, I want everyone to again watch this, share it, tag your friends, share it. If you have questions, ask the questions. But how and when should we start teaching our babies about financial literacy as we close out?
Okay, so I'll say as soon as they are born, like as soon as, and it starts in maybe not necessarily the principles of money, but you can teach it in other types of ways, and you also need to start saving for them immediately.
Yeah.
My daughter, I have a 3-month-old daughter. Guess when her college savings account started?
At birth.
Was open. You know what I mean? When she was 1 month old, and it's a community event. And when we talk about how we can educate them, how we can educate our family and those around us, rather than give our kid toys when it's their birthday or Christmas, maybe you could put some money into that 529.
That's right.
I got my dad on the plan. I'm going to get the other family members adopted into it. But that's, forget my daughter loves My Little Pony, and we get her a lot of toys and a lot of My Little Ponies. But let's make sure when you're giving that type of stuff, you're also putting the money your way.
Yeah. Well, again, thank you for joining us. We're getting ready to close out. Thank you to WBGR Online for having us here in the studio in New Carrollton, Maryland.